Good afternoon, Professor. Thank you so much for taking the time to speak with me. I'm Syed Tahmid, and I'm a graduate student at Georgia Southern University. I'm introducing Dr. Stetson Rawls, Assistant Professor of Civil Engineering Department at Georgia Southern University. He got his PhD in Civil Engineering from University of Texas at Austin, and his research expertise includes water and sanitation technology development, quantitative sustainable design and engineering systems, and community-based studies. It's been an honor to speak with you today, and I appreciate your willingness to share your knowledge and expertise with me. First, can you shortly share your PhD journey with me, please?
Sure. Yeah, I'd be happy to. Thanks so much for the opportunity to talk with you and share a little bit about myself and some advice maybe that I have that hopefully will be helpful for some students. Um, so I did my PhD at University of Texas at Austin, and I actually followed from my undergrad, Dr. Naveed Saleh from University of South Carolina to University of Texas. He happened to get a new job there the year I was graduating from my undergraduate, so I followed him there to keep working with him and was advised by him along with a co-advisor, Dr. Desmond Lawler. And my PhD there focused primarily on point-of-use drinking water systems for disinfection. So ceramic water filters was what I researched in the lab. And I was looking at how to use a natural material, a natural biopolymer, to try and immobilize silver nanoparticles on the surface of the filters to keep the silver there so it's able to kill bacteria for a longer amount of time. And then I also did some studies looking at water use and water practices in some communities as well.
That's great. We are international student look for PhD and master's opportunity every year, and I think you have a one or two graduate student from Bangladesh, I think, or
yes, yeah.
And you said your PhD supervisor was from Bangladesh, and
Yeah.
So do you like Bangladeshi foods?
Yes, yeah.
Okay, yeah. So in this basis, I actually want some information or some suggestion for the international students. That's why I piled up some questions, and I will ask gradually. And I need your permission to start for the questions.
Yeah, absolutely. Please start.
Thank you. Usually, when you are hiring a graduate student, international student basically as a research or teaching assistant, what do you check especially to the students?
So the main thing I look for in a student, a student emails me, or if they're on our list of students that apply to the program, I'll try and look at their resume, try and see, maybe some numbers in terms of, GPA or test scores or things like that. But really, I'm trying to look for a few things. One, it's great if they have some experience with some relevant skills that I'm looking for. That's always a plus, but not necessarily a requirement. Same thing for having, a 4.0 GPA, not necessarily a requirement. Those things I think help, though, in terms of, saying like, okay, wow, I want to talk to this student, basically. And then what I always try and do is, and I encourage students to do as well, is try and schedule just a short 15-minute either Zoom meeting or phone call with a prospective student or a prospective faculty, right, that you're interested in working with. And in those calls, what I try and do and what I mainly look for is that student motivated. That's the number one thing I think I try and look for in students, that are motivated and students that want to have an impact. So, whether that's having an impact through their research, through maybe future teaching they do, I just want to see somebody that has a fire basically within them and they really want to excel. Because I think with that, you can do well in graduate school. I'm of a strong belief that I think pretty much anybody can do pretty much anything if they put their mind to it. And if they're motivated to do it. So that's why I try and look for motivated and, students that want to have an impact.
Okay. Then I want to know, would you consider if a student publish an article in a national kind of journal or conference, but that is not much popular, but he has published 2 or 3 papers or conferences?
I think that's fabulous. Yeah. So what I usually look for, obviously it would be amazing, right? If we have students that are applying to graduate school that have, incredible journals and huge impact factors that are internationally known. That's rarely ever the case.
Yeah.
So I think having any experience and demonstrating that either in the email briefly if you're able to, or in your CV or resume is really awesome. So usually what I look at, if it has some link to it,
Nice.
that's really helpful because then I can say, okay, wow, this was actually done. I can see it. I can see some output from it.
Okay.
Even if it's just a posted abstract from the conference, that's great. And then if that's not there, that's fine too. I usually will just try and look at the title and try and see, what are the relevant skills related to that the student contributed. And it's amazing, I think, if they have first author on it, but if they're co-authors, I think that's great to do and great to include as well. So I would, encourage any student to include those on it, include them on their CV, resume, talk about them when you're either through an email or when you're meeting with prospective faculty.
Next thing I want to ask you, many of the students in some cases face some problem in undergrad, like family problem or any other hazard sometime happen, and their CGPA drastically get lower and like sometimes below 3. But what they do in some cases, for example, from my experience, my first semester CGPA was 2.68 honestly, and then I tried my best to take it up 3.5. But what happened in first semester, I was in a new environment and it was very adverse situation in this university because it's the first time I'm out of my family.
Yeah.
So if something happened like that, the CGPA is below 3, what other thing you consider?
So I think having a stellar GPA is great. Like I said, obviously that's going to help get you through that initial, kind of check, or get you maybe, get you admitted into a grad program or get a student admitted into a grad program. But I think it takes a lot more than just a GPA in a lot of instances to be able to get an assistantship as well. So for that, I think that's where, if students don't have a great GPA, making it clear that, okay, maybe, the last 2 years of, undergraduate, this was my GPA.
Okay.
To show that you kind of moved up and were able to perform better and better.
Yeah.
Also, I think that's where, if the GPA is low, I think that's where some of these like extracurricular things can really make a difference.
Point,
so making any of those clear, any additional skills you may have, can be really important. Any research experience, any work experience, any of those things to try and document and make the case for can be really helpful.
Yeah.
Some schools do have like very strict, like, we don't admit anyone below this level. So just be aware. I think it's important for students to be aware of as they're applying for places.
It's a university requirement, I think.
Yeah, sometimes it's a university requirement. And there are ways, at least at most places I've heard of, to go around those university requirements, but it's usually on being like on academic probation for the first semester or maybe the first year, which means that there's, you basically have to perform really well right away, which can be really stressful.
Yeah.
So I think, in summary, I think if a student doesn't have a good GPA, trying to demonstrate that maybe, they were able to keep performing better and better, maybe demonstrate or show what their GPA is in the last 2 years. And then, trying to demonstrate any extra activities or any extra things that they've partaken in that are going to help them maybe as a future researcher.
That's great. Okay. So you have already talked about IELTS, TOEFL. Especially, do you consider GRE score or still now?
So I personally, I personally don't put a lot of value in GRE score.
Okay.
Because there's research out there that shows that there is no correlation between GRE score and grad student success.
Okay.
So that's my personal take.
Okay.
I think one of the good things that have come out of the pandemic is that GRE scores have started to be waived a lot of places, and they're keeping them waived. I don't think GRE scores are a great indicator. I mean, the research shows that GRE scores are not a great indicator of grad student success. That's not to say if you have a great GRE score that you shouldn't include it. If you have a great GRE score that's strong, great.
Include.
Include it. I think that's great. I think that demonstrates, some capacity, and not to say that students that have great GRE scores aren't going to do great in grad school.
Right.
That's not what I'm trying to say. I'm just trying to say that low GRE scores aren't necessarily a sign that somebody's not going to do well in grad school.
Great.
Okay.
Great.
So yeah, if you have it and it's good, include it. If you haven't taken GRE and you want to go to a place that doesn't require GRE, it's up to you, basically.
Right.
It's not. I don't think, personally, I don't think it's a necessity. I do think it's a more old school way of thinking for GRE.
Okay. Yeah.
And I think there are newer faculties like myself that aren't as interested in seeing really high GRE scores.
Great. So, how can an international student know that a professor has an open RA or TA position?
So I would suggest them trying to use their network and trying to understand do they know anybody at that school? Can they reach out to anybody? Grad students at that school, try and go through that. That's a great route. Reaching out to the faculty directly is a great route, and then trying to look on any online forums. So there's different places out there that post it. So I'm in environmental engineering. There's some AESP is a big one for environmental engineering. That's where I usually post open positions.
Okay.
And just reaching out directly to faculty.
What about your personal website, like university website?
Some people post it on personal websites too, or university websites. Twitter and LinkedIn can be a great place too. So keeping an eye on them. That's actually how I ended up getting my postdoc position as when I graduated from PhD. I did a postdoc at University of Illinois, Urbana-Champaign, and there was somebody that I really wanted to do a postdoc with. So I was following them on Twitter and kind of keeping up with what they were tweeting about, and they happened to tweet about hey, I'm going to be hiring a few postdocs coming up. And that was how I was able to find that position.
Great. Okay. One confusion always we face, like in the United States, if it's daytime, in Indian part, Bangladesh part, it happens to be like nighttime.
Yeah.
So it's reverse. So most of the time we get confused when should we send an email to the professor, and sometimes what happen, if I send it in the night time of the United States time, then it may get down on the bottom of the email, and maybe professor did not see my email. So what's your suggestion? What's the best time?
I think that's going to depend on the faculty, on the person, because some people open their email 6 a.m. and they start working down the list.
Okay.
Some people open their email at midnight and they start working down the list. So I don't know, or some people look at it just throughout the day, right?
Yeah.
And some people don't look at it outside of regular business hours from 9 to 5.
Okay.
I think it's going to depend on the person.
Okay.
I don't think there's much harm in trying to send a follow-up if you don't get a response the first time. I'm not suggesting sending 10 follow-ups or something like that if somebody doesn't answer. But I think it just depends on the person. Some people are great with email. Some people are not as good as email. Sometimes people have a lot of things going on. They're not able to answer emails. So I don't know if I have it depends on the person, I think, a lot. Yeah.
We are almost at the bottom. Okay, so the next question is it possible to change major in masters and PhD if one have similar courses in undergrad? For example, from my case, I was an undergraduate student from Chuet, and the department was petroleum and mining engineering. But I had some geology and geotech based courses, and based on my job experience, I did some geotech based experience job. Then I emailed to the professor, Dr. Young, and he actually chose me. So what's your opinion? Is it like how much is impactful to change the major? And
I think you can totally change majors. Yeah. I think you have to be, I guess, a little bit like tactful or a little bit creative in highlighting how you have experience for that. For instance, I'm in environmental engineering, and that, the research we do is around environmental engineering, but the students I work with don't always have the background in environmental engineering. Sometimes I try and find, and I have tried to recruit people from computer science or computer engineering, because we're working on a project that is very computational heavy, programming heavy, and we need students with that experience. Another example I think is for environmental engineering is chemical engineering. We love chemical engineers because they know all of the chemistry behind
Yeah.
it better maybe than a lot
Yeah.
of environmental engineers.
Right.
So I would say look for any opportunity you're remotely interested in, and then try and highlight those strengths like you did, like you're talking about, to convey that, yes, I have some foundational knowledge, or if you don't have, necessarily a great deal of foundational knowledge, try and convey that you're motivated to be able to gain that experience to get you ready for the position.
Right. And the last thing is, considering the present advancement in technology, could you have any suggestion for the students, like especially for the undergraduate students, not related to the specific country, Bangladesh, but for the world or for the United States, for undergraduate students, what kind of extracurricular activities or what kind of thing that will help in the future to in the master's or PhD journey?
So I think any research experience is great. If you can, even if it's a little bit volunteering, getting some experience, understanding how that research process maybe works, whether it's in the lab, whether it's in the field, whether it's on the computer, whatever research experience you can, I think that's extremely helpful to get you ready for master's and PhD. The other thing is like any programming language. I think learning any programming language under the sun, whatever one, there's most times for grad school, there's some way you can use that programming knowledge and programming language to help you with your PhD. And if you know one programming language, it helps a lot to be able to learn the next one. So it's not saying like, oh, you have to learn Java, you have to learn Python. I don't know if that's necessarily true, but learning one, understanding how that works can be a great skill to have. And I think that's going to help in most research projects for master's and PhD.
Okay. So this is the end of formal part.
Okay.
And anything you can add or anything suggestion. So if you want anything to tell me about that.
Yeah, let me see. I think if I have any other advice.
Sure.
I think so one, I guess, a few pieces of advice I can think of here.
Okay.
And you're welcome to share these if you'd like.
Sure.
So a few pieces of advice that more general for students interested in master's and PhD in the U.S. The first thing, when you email faculty, I would suggest to not send a huge email. Try and keep it brief but descriptive. So it's a balance, I think, between it, where it's brief enough where they'll actually want and be able to read the whole thing quickly, but also enough depth to it that they're able to see that you are passionate about it, you have some experience, relevant experience, and that you've done your homework. So the other thing is do your homework, do your homework, do your homework. Right. Okay? So I would suggest before emailing a faculty at the school, look at what that process is about. Look at what their programs are. Look at what their focuses are. Look at that faculty. If you can read one or two, even just abstracts of their research papers or anything like that. Look at their website. Look at the students they have. Look at, how many students they have. Any of these things. Just do some homework before sending an email. And then make sure that email is addressed to the faculty you are emailing. So sometimes I get emails, and I know many students send many emails to many different faculty.
Yeah.
But I get a handful, I guess, of emails where either it's another faculty's name.
Oh, they mean doing the copy and paste.
Yeah. Or it's another school.
Right.
That they're mentioning. So, that's going to be an immediate, okay, that's going in the trash bin, basically. That's going to kill any chance, basically.
Right.
So make sure you're reviewing it. The other thing, talk to faculty, talk to friends, talk to family that might have gone through grad school in the U.S. or other similar programs. Try and get as much advice as you can. Get them to review maybe your resume, your CV. Try and use your network as much as you can. I think that's a big way to be able to find the right position.
So this is the end of our discussion today. I really, really appreciate your time for this kind of helpful discussion, and that I'm really, really think that it will greatly impact and greatly help to my fellow students in my country as well as from any other countries. And so I appreciate it.
So much.
Thank you, sir.